Hello and welcome to this episode of No Free Lunch, Economics for a Fallen World. Professor Guernsey here, Professor Heyman there. Dr. Heyman, in this chapter or this topic of money, what do you mean when you say money is the most marketable commodity?
Yeah, that was a term that Ludwig von Mises talked about, but really he was really hinting back to what Carl Menger had, and I've got a quote here in the textbook that we use from Carl Menger, who's the father of the Austrian School of Economics. And really, Menger just outlined the introduction of money and how it historically evolved. In a previous video, we talked about Abraham and the sons of Heth and how they used commercial standard silver even back in that day. But Menger argued that same thing from a secular economic perspective, that it's something that's naturally going to occur because each individual will find it in their own interest to trade for something that's a more desirable commodity. So before there's ever any money, you can imagine that barter kind of situation, but that can only last in a very, very rude society, or early society, we would say, because the complications of trying to calculate all the different prices and possible exchanges, very quickly you'll emerge on money. We see the same thing in the prisoner of war camps in World War II, with cigarettes becoming the form of money. Very quickly you're going to figure out what that is. And so for Abraham and the early traders, that would have been silver. But the way that process works and why he calls it the most marketable commodity is whatever you produce. Let's say you're a woodworker and you produce chairs. Well, if you want to find somebody that sells shoes, you have to hope. Let's say you sell shoes and I sell chairs. When I want your shoes, I have to hope you want a chair. Well, that's kind of a problem because you may not want a chair when I want that. So I've got to find somebody that wants a chair, and I want to exchange that chair for something that's more likely that somebody else will want, so I can eventually get to what you would want. And so everybody ultimately very quickly finds it in their own interest to trade their items that they produce for something that others might accept more readily than their own kind of thing. And that's why one kind of commodity is ultimately going to emerge as the most favored, whether it's the most favored or not, like cigarettes in a POW camp. Many people would in POW camps might not even smoke, but it didn't matter that they didn't smoke. They would still take cigarettes because somebody else would. That's what we mean by most marketable commodity. It's most widely accepted by somebody else. Everybody wants to trade for it, and that commodity will be money. Historically, precious metals filled that role. And that's Menger's original or theories on the origins of money.
And it would be true, would it not, whether we think about barter or trade with money, that as long as the trade is voluntary, both parties think that they're benefiting from that trade. Otherwise, they wouldn't
Absolutely.
trade.
That's our definition almost of rationality. People trying to do the best they can,
Sure.
ex ante or before the fact, they think they're going to be better off by exchange.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of No Free Lunch.